Kia ora and welcome to this issue of Global Perspectives. Here we are in New Zealand. Kia ora is a formal greeting that we give to visitors to our country, and I'm standing here on what is our newest location. It's a new facility that we have in Medair in Auckland, and it's to be the site of a new University of the Nations campus. At present we are trusting God and working and saving and doing what all YWAMers do, trust God. We're believing Him for this facility. It has 7 large buildings, about 60 acres of land, and we'll build homes and a community, place for us to be on this land as well. This year, as I've considered the past 2 years of my life, I realized that in 1994 many things happened to me that I felt I had no control over. It was a very busy time. Lots of things were happening. And I reviewed at the end of the year and considered there must be a better way than this. The Lord began to speak to me about hearing the new things before they come to pass. In Isaiah 43 it says, "Old things have passed away, but I am desiring to speak to you of new things, but you must be aware of it." At the beginning of this year, in fact on New Year's Eve, the Lord spoke to me about the fact that He has anointed us and called us, not only to preach the good news to the poor, not only to set captives free, not only to renew sight to the blind, but also for us to declare what kind of year this will be, to declare the year of the Lord's favor. I believe that 1996 is a new year, and it will be the kind of year that we ask the Lord for, not the kind of year that we need to review at the end. It's a time for us to take hold of all of the challenges that we've had in the past. Indigenous people, for the leaders to rise up, for women to take hold of the challenge that God has set before them, for youth to rise up and fulfill their destiny. What will 1996 hold for you? It will be the favorable year of the Lord, if we declare it, if we proclaim it, and if we live in it. Our first story brings us here to New Zealand, where Linda Cowie has begun a project to develop a piece of property that's known as Gideon's Field, a place where people from all over the world can come to pray. Here's that story.
A few years ago, a farmer in New Zealand was flying over his land when he felt the Lord say to him to set aside a portion of his property to God and to call it Gideon's Field. Sometime later, the farmer was killed in an accident, and his partner was forced to sell the property. He sold it to a Christian woman who had seen the land in a dream, and though she didn't know specifically what it was for, she knew that she was to be the steward until God's plans unfolded. A few years later, this woman met Linda Cowie of Mercy Ships New Zealand, who was speaking at a prayer conference. The two quickly discovered they had similar visions, the women having land set aside for God, Linda with a vision to open a training center to raise up Maori and European missionaries to minister in the South Pacific Islands. It was decided that the Cowies would be trustees and the land would be used for that training center. But that wasn't all. If you could walk through the property, you might notice that various areas look similar to the terrain of different continents: Africa, South America, Europe, even New Zealand. And so the plan was formed whereby one could go on a prayer walk around the world praying for the nations in just a few hours.
New Zealanders, they love to pray and they love walking in the bush. And so combining the two, this would be an ideal place to really get a heart for the nations.
After registration, one can walk to the various stations where a small table is set up. In it is a tape and printed information about the country as well as prayer points. After a time of intercession, you can move on to the other continents. Development is still underway, but when opened, Gideon's Field will be available to church groups, youth groups, or anyone wanting to come and pray for the nations. Gideon's Field will help to raise up Gideon's army.
And part of this whole concept of Gideon's army is that I believe that as young people pray at the different prayer spots, my prayer is that they'll be called to those nations that they're praying for.
Hello, I'm Andy Butcher. Youth of the Mission's new International Center for Cultural Studies and Development has opened in Tampa, Florida, in the United States. The director is Island Breeze founder Seseni Liao, who has founded the center to encourage ethnic Christians to find and appreciate the good in their traditional cultures and share it with others. He says that each culture has value and importance, with strength and uniqueness given by God for use in the body of Christ. Courses will help students look at different cultures from a biblical point of view, to see which aspects can be redeemed and used to worship God. Seseni has been involved in presenting the gospel through cultural arts since forming Island Breeze in 1980. In Russia, Medair workers were evacuated because of increasing unrest in Chechnya, where they're involved in a rebuilding program. The decision to pull out was made after 2 attacks on team members within a few days. In the first incident, armed gunmen stole money from the team's office. In the second, a car with 4 Medair workers in was hijacked at gunpoint, and the staff threatened before being robbed and allowed to go free. Medair was founded in 1988 as a partnership between Youth of the Mission, Mission Aviation Fellowship, and a French medical charity. A theatre club in a Scottish town is bringing new hope to local youngsters. The Buckhaven Theatre Project was founded by Youth of the Mission, the local parish church, and members of the local YMCA to give teenagers an alternative to crime and drugs. Around 60 young people meet each week to learn about theatre production and acting. Project leaders say the youngsters are gaining self-confidence, discovering new talents and learning the benefits of teamwork as they put on dramatic productions for parents and neighbours. This year's 30-day Muslim prayer focus has just ended, with over 140,000 copies of the Daily Prayer Guide being distributed around the world. Since the annual event was launched in 1993, there have been many reports of a growing openness to the gospel in Muslim communities and countries. If you are interested in being involved in next year's 30-day Muslim prayer focus, contact the address on your screen.
The world is coming to Atlanta.
Don't miss the YWAM Games outreach at the 1996 Olympics.
The largest outreach in YWAM history.
Where will you be?
We need your help. We need coordinators in housing, transportation, and food services.
All nations, all peoples, one event.
The evangelism opportunity of a lifetime.
Team housing is limited. Don't miss it. Register teams from your nation now.
Come to Atlanta and witness to the world.
Hi, I'm Jim Stier. I'm YWAM's new president. On a recent visit to Angola, I was talking to some of our team members who just made a long, dangerous trek up into some mountains to reach an unreached people group there, who's called the Mukuwandus. And in their introduction time with those people, they asked them where the Mukuwandus had come from. And were told a story that was almost word for word the story of the Tower of Babel. So, very excited, they got out their Bibles and read Genesis 11 to these people, and with translation, and the Mukuwandus were all very amazed. And they said, what is this book that has the story of our people? And they said, well, this is the story of God's pursuit of men. It's the Word of God. And when they were asked, well, did God know about the Mukuwandus? And when was God concerned about us? They were able to take them and show them Genesis 12, where God called Abraham, promised to bless him, and then promised that through him all people on earth will be blessed. And they're able to show that God's heart always included everyone. Now my question to us as a mission today is, can we show the same heart that God has? Can we show that we, from the beginning, whatever our specific specialty, whatever our ministry, whatever we are concerned about, at least a part of what we do is aimed out there so that all peoples on earth can be blessed? You cannot really be a biblical Christian and only embrace half of God's covenant with us. You must embrace the blessing or you have nothing to offer. But if you don't embrace also the purpose of God to bless all peoples, then you haven't embraced the covenant. And as Youth with a Mission, and as individuals in Youth with a Mission, as ministries and bases in Youth with a Mission, we must be whole covenant Christians. What's your base doing? What are you doing as an individual? What does God want you to do so that the unreached, like the Mukuwandus, can hear?
A worldwide missions movement has recently been launched that may reap a harvest of souls in the next 5 years that could surpass any other time in human history. That's why Youth with a Mission is excited to partner together with Joshua Project 2000. Joshua Project is committed to engaging a church planting movement into all of the remaining unreached people groups by the year 2000.
As we near the end of this millennium, a massive yet glorious challenge stands before the church. A church for every people and the gospel for every person. For the first 5 years of the 1990s, the AD 2000 and beyond movement has united hundreds of missions agencies, denominations, and organizations to a common vision for the 1040 window. This culminated in the global consultation on world evangelization held in Korea. The second half of this decade brings an exciting transition to mobilization. This 5-year effort of mobilizing church planting teams to the least reached ethno-linguistic people groups is called Joshua Project 2000.
Joshua Project 2000 is a cooperative strategy by the entire body of Christ to see the gospel for every person and the church for every unreached people group. It involves churches, denominations, missions agencies, and individual Christians whose heart is stirred by this vision. There are 3 main elements that are part of Joshua Project 2000. Number 1 are research teams. Like Joshua and Caleb going into the Promised Land to bring back information that was used by strategists to enter the land, that's what we need to see happen. The second element are prayer teams. We need to go in, break up the fallow ground through prayer and spiritual warfare. We need to go in and bind the strong man so that our third element will have success, and that is long-term church planting teams.
At the heart of the Joshua Project 2000 is a list of least reached peoples still needing a church planting movement. The list includes approximately 2,000 people groups which have less than 5% evangelical Christians among populations exceeding 10,000. Many of the groups are several million strong. The majority of these least reached peoples have no missionaries working amongst them. What will it take to get the job done?
It's going to take a lot of prayer because some of these peoples have been in the bondage of the enemy, probably all of them, for almost 2,000 years. And so to break through is going to take concerted, focused, sincere, directed, fervent prayer as the primary thing. Then it's going to take togetherness. I think we've tried to do it individually by different groups, local churches, denominations, Christian organizations. And I think it's going to take a commitment to partnership, a commitment to work together. I think it's going to take, thirdly, the raising up of resources from around the world that God has been working in these very days to raise up from the continents of Latin America, Asia, and Africa to say, let's see how we can release God's people in these different continents to join together in this task.
Even though the vast majority of unreached peoples can now be pinpointed on the map, little is known about many of them. Joshua Project 2000 seeks to cooperate with mission agencies and churches to send short-term research teams to learn vital facts which will help facilitate church planting efforts. Youth with a Mission is wholeheartedly backing the project and hopes to send Joshua Project teams as soon as possible.
YWAM bases need to start thinking about sending out Joshua Project 2000 teams right away. If we really are serious about Jim Stier's challenge of planting teams within 1,000 unreached people groups by the year 2000, we have no time to spare.
Hello, I'm Andre Crouch, and you're watching Global Perspectives.
We represent a new type of missionaries. We represent missionaries who are taking advantage of their own indigenous expression culturally.
Their own indigenous expression. That cultural expression was taken into the Native American reservations during the 1994 Impact World Tour. The purpose for this outreach? To instill hope, vision, and future destiny in the lives of the Native American people.
When the Native people first come in, you know, it's like there's just a sense of hopelessness, no sense of challenge, no sense of destiny as a people group. But after our performance and after the presentations, not presentation, but after the testimonies of our people as Pacific Island people, there seems to be an enlightenment in their spirit.
Being a part of the Indian culture, just seeing the Indians, I realized that God has called them to be like eagles as a culture. But there's a weakness that's going on right now. But God is wanting to raise them up to be that bald eagle, to be that one that's above the clouds, the cliffs, and to soar high in who they are as people.
I know for myself I'll never be able to identify what they went through as a people. But as I've been to like places like Wounded Knee, and then I see results of times of the different reservations we've been to, people giving their lives to the Lord, and we're able to give the understanding of that forgiveness. I realize that the only hope that these natives will ever have will be God.
God is using us here on this tour to let them know that it's not only a white man God, but a God of all nations and God of all cultures.
1994 was the year of stepping out for Island Breeze. In September, the first Principles of Redeeming the Culture School was held in Tonga, with approximately 12 nations represented.
It was a statement to say that what we have done in Island Breeze over the years, more amongst the Pacific Island cultures, it's time for the cultures of the world, the indigenous cultures, to find that freedom that we have found over the years in the ministry. The school was there to pass on the principles and all that we had learnt.
It was more inspiring and more encouraging for what I'm doing here in Island Breeze, of being out there reaching the nations and redeeming the different nations and the different cultures of the world.
It's an international trend in a sense that people are wanting to get back to their roots. People are wanting to identify with something, and I really believe that that's an indication of people's search for a greater understanding of who they are, and hopefully that understanding will bring them into a relationship with our Lord Jesus.
A worldwide need, and Island Breeze has accepted the mandate.
This is something that God has brought to the horizon. This is something that God has initiated. And we just feel so privileged that, and we want to make sure that it's done the right way. But at the same time, we want to make sure that people are not taking it for their personal advantage, but that we are all working together so that Christ may be presented to the nations of the world. So part of our concern is wanting to make sure that there is sufficient training facilities, which has really pushed us to the forefront of wanting to make sure that, hey, let's get something going here. What have we been doing right that we need to repeat and we need to see put in place as a training thing for YWAM?
One thing to keep in mind is that Island Breeze is not just about performing.
I think for us here in Australia, one of our main objectives is to be involved with the Aboriginal people. And you can't always just take a stage presentation to, that sort of setting. It takes a lot of, in these last 8 years since we've been here, we've found that we've had to build relationships.
I believe we've been sent here by God not to only do our own thing, but use what God has given to us to serve Australia in any way we can.
We have a big task ahead of us. We really didn't know what we were getting into as far as seeing other cultures being redeemed. But now it's been clarified or specified that God has really given us really clarity. And now with this mandate, I have seen that everyone is really taking ownership of what the redeeming the culture aspects really means.
Jesus is the Lord of everything that He's created and the culture in itself. And when you bring it under His Lordship, then therefore your heart's intention and everything they do is to really bring glory to His name.
Joshua Project 2000 is committed to engaging